I think it goes without saying that Ichigo's transformation into the Vasto Lorde Hollow known as White is without a doubt one of, if not the coolest transformations in anime. This chain of events to most people is their favorite moment in the manga and anime of Bleach. Ichigo was able to overcome Renji, defeat the monster Kenpachi, he was able to defeat his opposing view of justice Byakuya, and in his third fight with Grimmjow, he was finally able to defeat his rival in battle. So when Ichigo wasn't able to overcome Ulquiorra, it was quite shocking. Ulquiorra had become a threat so large that it felt like his power was alien to Uryu. He was shown to have a transformation that supersedes his first transformation, eclipses the other adversaries shown among the series, and it appears that all hope is lost for Ichigo. Ichigo went from being completely annihilated by a force so great that it resulted in the main character himself actually being killed, to a table-flipping turn of events which took Ulquiorra the Dominator in this scenario and changed him into the victim. This was and will always be one of the most iconic moments in Shonen Jump magazine. But I'm sure you've all asked yourself at least once when watching or reading this famous bout of fisticuffs, how strong was that form of Ichigo? Because we only see it once in the series, a half-evolved version of White, and then a version where Ichigo can use the powers of White in the same way Naruto can tap into Kurama's power during battle. Well, today, just like my Ulquiorra video, I'm gonna explain to you just how strong that form of Ichigo was, and how he could have been even much stronger than was actually shown to us viewers. So, if you're a fan of Bleach, hit that subscribe button. Let's support Bleach together as a team until the Bleach anime comes back, and I hope that you all enjoy this video. If you support me, I'll continue to support Bleach with many videos in the future. This shouldn't necessarily need to be said, but the Vasto Lorde would without a doubt solo all of the Espada by itself in a gauntlet. You see, what's interesting about the Vasto Lorde is that it wasn't even at full power when it fought against Ulquiorra, or in the Hellverse movie. A movie which some say, Tite Kubo wanted his name removed from the credits and DVDs because he doesn't agree with the scaling, the narrative, and hates the movie itself. Even though he himself said his biggest complaint was only that the scriptwriter and staff didn't use all of his original ideas that they discussed together. He felt like he didn't deserve credit for the actual movie, and yet he still stated word for word that the remake of the Vasto Lorde Ichigo vs Ulquiorra fight was actually how he imagined the battle to go. Meaning, this overblown conspiracy that Tite Kubo despised the movie isn't actually true. Do you guys really believe that Shonen Jump and anyone that is above Tite Kubo when it comes to the industry of producing the actual manga and anime of Bleach, or just any anime that's under the massive title of Shonen Jump, right? Do you guys actually believe that they would allow him to slander a product or speak ill of it when they are trying to sell that said product? I mean, the actual note I am referencing is a part of one of the special editions of the Bleach Hellverse movie. The fact that some people misinterpret this comment to use for power scaling arguments or to twist what's being said is incredibly dishonest and very annoying whenever I hear it come up. It's the equivalent of saying the manga isn't canon because Kubo has expressed many times in the past that there was actually major changes and things that were actually stretched out by Shonen Jump and his editors throughout the manga's run. It's basically the same thing. We also do know that the movies, although they have a weird timeline and basically don't even make any sense to the real continuity of the story, right, are referenced by Kubo even in the manga itself. Tite Kubo even drew a one-shot manga chapter for the movie and said once again that the Vasto Lorde versus Ulquiorra fight, which was at the start of the movie, is in fact how he wanted the fight to go. And as you can see in the manga version, it's much shorter than the anime and the movie version, and Kubo has expressed in the past that he wasn't actually able to show a lot of things in the manga the way that he would like to do because of time constraints, and sometimes he was just happy to actually get a chapter done at the end of the week. In fact, to get back to the point, Tite Kubo wanted the title of his name to be removed because he felt like he didn't do enough to warrant the title of executive producer, which he said verbatim. If anything can be taken from this shows how much of a nice guy Tite Kubo actually is. Also to add, this note has never actually been officially translated, so it could have an entirely different meaning altogether. Now anyway, this is relevant because in the Bleach Hellverse movie, White has some insanely impressive feats and statements made by very important characters among the series, and it's very irritating to see people try to discredit some of the feats or statements because of the Tite Kubo comments that they just love to twist and misinterpret. Take for example, Yamamoto is surprised by the power of the Vasto Lorde, claiming it is a monster which was able to cut the chains of hell and thus being a feat which was widely known as being borderline impossible among the Bleachverse. He also put emphasis on the fact that the Vasto Lorde had not only blown open the gates of hell, putting all humans in danger, but Ichigo claims if the hollow goes rampant, it could destroy the entire world. This isn't crazy either, because the Vasto Lorde shows us firsthand that its casual Ceroblast can cover multiple layers of hell, blow open the gates of hell, then expose the world to disaster with its attacks. Some like to say, well, the world being in danger is a direct result of hell and earth becoming connected, and they say this to downplay the Vasto Lorde, but Ichigo's statement contradicts this, and Yamamoto, a character who, while suppressed, was going to destroy the Soul Society and much more, which is a parallel to the real world, they both say it's a threat to the entire planet. Even without all of those statements by Ichigo or Yamamoto, the Vasto Lorde casually covers multiple layers of hell with said Ceroblast, and that Ceroblast even blows open the gates of hell and affects Earth all in the same attack. That in itself is an easy multi-planetary feat because of a few reasons. Number one, the statements I showed before, which are said verbatim by reputable characters. The feat itself, visually, on screen, in front of our eyeballs, shows us that feat happening. To argue against this feat, even though we have visual proof of it happening, well, you would need to be a smooth brain to do so. Hell would also need to be by default multi-planetary in size per layer of hell, or at least bare minimum just, one planet size area per layer, just bare minimum. As if you take real life for an example, we can barely sustain 7+ billion humans on Earth, and yet we know that throughout history, at least 100 billion humans have lived and died in the past. In the Bleach world, not only are we aware that Yamamoto has killed potentially trillions of souls in his lifetime, as shown by his Bankai ability to resurrect the dead, which actually puts a number on how many souls he has killed, but we know in the Bleach universe, it isn't limited to just the human world, and there are beasts from different realms, plus hollows, Quincy, etc. Even if just a quarter of those who have died throughout Bleach's history went to hell, let's say it's in the trillions, right, which is consistent with Yamamoto's Bankai and also the fact that there's most likely more souls than there are in our real world's history, then it still backs up my point. And as time goes on, hell would actually need to be that big anyway to sustain future souls that will go to hell and bump up the populace. Even if you want to disregard the Hellverse feats, that's absolutely fine, because by just simply scaling the normal canonicity of the story, you can still get these kind of planetary level examples from the hollow inside Ichigo anyway. Something as simple as even the weakest of Espada, if they use a Gran Rey Cero below the canopy of Las Noches, they could wipe out an area the size of a country or potentially a continent, depending on how you scale it, right? As I said in my Ukiura video, the inside of Las Noches actually appears to be much larger than it is on the outside, as it's most likely a pocket dimension made by Aizen, very similar to the Fullbringer known as Yukio, who could make an entire replica of Karakura Town with his ability that can make an internal pocket dimension, and much more inside his own world. I don't actually believe it's limited to Karakura Town, but he could easily perform that feat itself. And we also know this about Las Noches because it's much easier to calculate the outside of Las Noches than the inside, as when you actually take a look at the outside, yeah, you can pixel scale how big it is, and it turns out to only be like a city-sized object. Not actually that crazy. Some people even downplay it to being even smaller. But if you actually look at the inside of Las Noches, it has its own curvature, implying it is very damn big, and it also has its own artificial light source on the inside. So it would work as simple as this. If two of the weakest Espada, Aranjero and Zomari, can destroy Las Noches with a Gran Rey Cero in their base forms, their release dates can do that by over 10 times, as we know Resurrection scale directly to Bankai, and we know the direct multiplier to how much that is. We also do know for a fact that they are based on Shinigami Bankais, because this is stated by both Urahara and Aizen, very reputable characters among the series, and two who have actually used the Hogyoku before, the same object used to bestow the Espada with those set abilities which are based on Shinigami powers. And we know for a fact that just Bankai Ichigo alone, the much stronger one with a Zenkai boost who fights against Ukiura, the same guy who is ranked at number 4, but we all know is actually stronger than the rank of 4, but for the sake of the argument, right, it doesn't doesn't really matter. We'll just say that he's only rank 4. Well, base Ukiura would defeat Zomari and Aranjiro in their destructive power even if they were in their release forms. Now, this Bankai Ichigo that I briefly mentioned before, who can keep up with Ukiura, he could do the exact same thing. Now, let's say this Ichigo is roughly 10 times stronger than those two individually, as he can keep up with someone that is ranked 4 among the Espada, meaning this might actually be a low ball, obviously, but anyway, it's confirmed by Grimmjow, Urahara, and Ukiura in their fight that Ichigo gets stronger with each battle. This is why the power scaling feels very weird in the Hueco Mundo arc when Ichigo goes from fighting a Privodon Espada to fighting the 4th Espada out of nowhere and actually keeping up with the guy. It feels weird, right guys? Well, that's because he gets Zenkai boosts as he fights, as I just said. His holification then gives him another 10 times increase in power when he puts on the mask, because he actually uses the holification to make himself relative to Resurrections multiple times. If he didn't have the holification, Grimmjow would have destroyed him with absolutely no difficulty whatsoever. And we know he masters the holification in that fight, meaning there is no reason to doubt that the multiplier is 10 rather than 3 or 5 times when he fights Ukiura. Aizen's actually the one that states he masters the holification against Grimmjow in their 3rd fight. Base Ukiura is then relative to this holified Ichigo, who should be around 20 times stronger than the Espada that I actually mentioned. His first release is then 10 times that in strength. Second release is then 100 times his base, because 10 times 10 equals 100, very simple. And thanks to the data books, Ukiura's Seto Oscuras improves his attack potency by an order of magnitude, which we see proof of when he goes into his first release form and fires the Seto Oscuras. It makes everybody below the canopy of Los Noches actually fall to the ground and they can't even stand when that thing is fired. And then when he goes into his second release form, there is a thick alien-like spiritual pressure being felt from the top of Los Noches all the way until the very moment that Ukiura actually dies. Even while almost dead, he still has this much power. Although this Ukiura is quite strong in his second release form, he has to use his Seto Oscuras to be able to even combat the Vasto Lorde Ceros, and can barely compete with the power of those Ceros, even while using this technique which amps his own attack potency. This Vasto Lorde is also wearing less than half of its Shihakusho, and the more spiritual pressure you have means your attack, defense, and general power is limited based on that. Ichigo specifically talks to Unohana about this, and we know that the Vasto Lorde is mixed directly with his Shinigami powers, as the hollow inside Ichigo is actually Ichigo's Asuchi, and this is why when he goes Bankai before getting his true original powers in the war arc, it works more like a Resurrection than a conventional Bankai. Ukiura even says Ichigo's Getsuga Tenshos are like black Ceros when he fires them, and Hallibal states that Ichigo fights like an Espada when she's watching Grimmjow and Ichigo fight. Even Grimmjow in their first fight, he actually mocks Ichigo for only getting buffs in his physical attributes when he transforms into Bankai, something which Resurrections of Hollows are mostly known for. This is relevant because the Vasto Lorde, who is well over 5 to 10 times stronger than this Ukiura, while heavily weakened, can not only completely neg Ukiura's Ceros that have their own multiplier when they're fired, but block attacks with his bare hands that Ukiura uses after his Seto Oscurases don't work, which obviously implies that the Lanzador Relampago is much stronger than the previous fired Ceros, meaning he is bare minimum 10 times stronger than Ukiura. If the Seto Oscuras is only 5 times of an increase, let's lowball it because order of magnitude is very contentious when it comes to what it actually means, right? Let's just say it's only 5 times. Then the Lanzador Relampago would be bare minimum 10 times, right? Let's just add another 5 times because when it's fired, it's way more impressive than the Seto Oscuras is. And also Ukiura whips this out as a last resort because he's like, well, the Setos didn't work, let's whip out this, which is even bigger. He himself even says, I don't want to unleash this at close range because of how powerful it is. And the Vasto Lorde basically makes this attack look like a joke when he casually avoids it multiple times, and in the movie he's able to blow it up with his own Ceros, and he's also able to grab the attack with his bare hand and stop the attack. The same Vasto Lorde, which is apparently less than half as strong as he should be with a full Shihakusho. So we could say at full power he would be at least 25 times stronger because 2 times 10 is 20, add the extra 5 because the statement says that he is wearing less than half the Shihakusho, rounded off to 25, and bam, the Vasto Lorde can destroy Los Noches literally hundreds to thousands of times over, meaning once again, if you want to disregard the Hellverse feats, it doesn't matter because we can merely multiply the power of what the Vasto Lorde can do based on him destroying Los Noches. Now, if you scale the outside, sure, it's not crazy big, but he's still destroying what could be potentially a country-sized object thousands of times over. But if you want to scale the inside, he could be be destroying a continental level area thousands of times over too, and because the Vasto Lorde scales to much stronger characters later on in the series, this is very consistent. There's also a feat in the first movie of Bleach where around 150-ish random Joe Blow Soul Reapers, right? They're not strong at all whatsoever. They're pooling all of their energy together and they have the power to destroy an entire dimension. Now, a dimension could be anywhere between universal to planetary to solar system to galaxy. It really just depends because we don't really know how it's meant to be interpreted when it comes to Bleach in this sense, but we do know for a fact that that's the amount of random fodder tier Soul Reaper guys that need to be together to create that amount of energy, right? And they're going to perform that feat, which a fully powered Vasto Lorde Hollow Ichigo could easily do, considering we've seen the way that Ukiura was able to treat those random Soul Reapers that were escorting Orihime through the Dongai. And also, even if like 1,000 Soul Reapers of that caliber were to attack the Vasto Lorde, none of them could cut him. It would essentially just be like Madara versus the Shinobi Alliance, but Bleach style. We also have a pretty cool feat thanks to Grimmjow where he puts Ukiura into a different dimension using the Kaha Nagashon. Now, he states that Ukiura would only stay in here for around 2 to 3 hours, and that's in his base form. This is a pretty crazy feat because he's literally being sealed in a different dimension and he can break out of that. Also, things like the Grand Ray Zero when fired off by even base Grimmjow can distort space and so on, so that in itself is pretty damn wild. And then when you consider the fact that Ukiura has a second release form, which means he could do that dimensional feat 100 times over with ease. You also have the Vasto Lorde who could do the same thing absolutely with ease too, which is crazy to think what that Vasto Lorde could do in that scenario. And then later on in the series, we have Ichigo casually breaking out of Yukio's pocket dimension, which he does just by merely going Bonkai. Now, once again, as I said in my Ukiura video, I'm not scaling these characters to that Ichigo, but the fact that they're performing pretty cool feats that are similar to what Ichigo does at that point in the story is very impressive. And then there's another planetary feat in the first movie also, which I'm not going to go into, but it just shows the consistency of how much of this stuff is actually going on in the series. Bleach characters, when it comes to planetary and beyond feats, it is very common among the series, but because it's not Dragon Ball, people don't like to hear that. As an example to back this up, and just more evidence to show that we don't even need to use the Hellverse movie, Ichigo's mere presence alone in Shikai form, which couldn't even cut base Grimmjow and was before he learned holification, had so much strength that he could affect the entire planet with his spiritual pressure, and this was stated by Shinji, who told him to relax his power. Even lieutenants like Rongiku have to wear a seal on their body that limits their power so that they won't affect the world of the living when they fight there, let alone a Vasto Lorde who is unironically thousands of times stronger than this Ichigo and Rongiku. Ichigo even has a feat where he blocks the Sokyoku, and that thing can not only overwhelm everything in existence with its spiritual pressure, according to the data books, but its power increases by 36 times when it's about to execute someone on the podium, making it the strength of 36 million Zanpakuto. And when this feat is performed, all of the captains are in shock that he can actually do this. This also isn't crazy to think about because throughout Bleach's history, the Sokyoku would need to be incredibly strong to execute threats at the same caliber of, say, people like Yuha Bark, Quincy's from the original war, which could be way stronger than we even know about, criminals like Unohana back in the day, and even captains that might have gone rogue. So for us to doubt that, why? That's all I have to say, why doubt that? Now, a lot of people like to say, well, the note which Aizen made that talks about the Sokyoku, where it says that the Sokyoku could destroy the Soul Society, they say, oh, well, this is just a lie, you know, it's a part of Aizen's note, blah, 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 doesn't make any sense, you know, we shouldn't listen to this. Well, here is the problem. The data books back up the idea that the Sokyoku is ridiculously strong. No one ever contests the feats of the actual Sokyoku when it's talked about in the series, you know, being the strength of 36 million Zanpakuto, being able to destroy the Soul Society, blah, 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 all that. And also, the data books do specifically say that it can overwhelm everything in existence, so for us to doubt that statement because it's in Aizen's note, as I said in my Ukiura video, if he was to say in the note, the sky is blue, does that mean that the sky isn't blue? You see what I mean? Now, even when the Vasto Lorde White fought Ishin in the chapters of Everything But the Rain, the Hollow could actually keep up with a Prime Ishin who, according to Aizen, would have resorted to using Shikai and Bonkai to actually slay the Hollow itself, back when it was considerably weaker. It was actually so much weaker to the point that Aizen thought it was a failure at that time, then changed his mind after talking to Tosen, and he stated that he was very curious what it will manifest into after fusing with Ichigo's mother, a Quincy, where later on it would become Ichigo's Asuchi, which merged together to create a hybrid of Soul Reaper power powers mixed with a Vasto Lorde, and the man known as Zangetsu was merely a projection of Yuha Bark, which was the manifestation of Ichigo's Quincy powers, which he would have obviously gotten from his mother. So the fact that a much weaker Vasto Lorde was able to tussle with a Isshin who, as far as we're concerned as viewers, this is the only example we have of a prime Isshin, because when Isshin gets his powers back, it's never implied that he has come back stronger by any means. All that's implied is that he got his powers back. And this Isshin that appears, the much older Isshin, when he fights Aizen, he's able to actually not only keep up with Aizen, but land multiple blows on him, which other characters couldn't even do. Sure, credit to the other characters, they were under the hypnosis, but Aizen was actually tussling with him, and although Aizen was, feeling him out because he was just about to transform, and as Urahara says, he wasn't fighting like normal, he was relying more on the Hogyoku and messing around. Even with that being said, I don't believe Aizen was allowing himself to get hit by those attacks. It was a matter of fact that Isshin was able to land blows on Aizen, and the fact that this much weaker Vasto Lorde scales to a stronger Isshin from back in the past, and this Isshin was willing to go Shikai and Bonkai against the Vasto Lorde, yet he never whipped those out against Aizen, and it's never actually implied that he can't use them against Aizen. We can absolutely say that yes, once again, as I even explained in my Ukiura video, it is absolutely consistent to scale the full-powered Vasto Lorde to characters like Aizen, Isshin, and all of the people that are in that battle, especially because the Vasto Lorde that appears later is much stronger than the one that fought Isshin. Hopefully that gives you guys a rough idea of how strong the Vasto Lorde actually is, and not the ridiculous downplay that a lot of people who don't follow the series correctly actually spout out all the time. Just remember, throughout this war with the Soul Society, Aizen made contingency plans for two major things that might happen. The first one being, he might have to fight Yamamoto, and we all know that Yamamoto has an insanely strong Zanpakuto, one that is famous throughout the history of the Soul Society, and a Bonkai which is regarded as the strongest Zanpakuto in terms of raw destructive power. Aizen made an entire being for the purpose of sealing that Zanpakuto so he wouldn't have to fight it, and he also verbatim stated himself that he purposely set up Ichigo to fight particular hollows one after another to develop the hollow inside of him so that he could potentially become a worthy opponent in the future. This is also confirmed after Ichigo's battle with Aizen, where he states that after clashing blades with Aizen, all he could feel from his blade was loneliness and the fact that Aizen actually wanted to be defeated by someone at the same level as him in battle. If you want more information on all of this, I really suggest that you watch my Ukiura video. If you're curious on how fast the Vasto Lorde actually is, I can't give you some exact number like, oh, he moves at 13,456,000 times the speed of light, because it's just so contentious and silly to place a number like that on Ichigo, but I do know how fast he should be on a high and low ball scale. No specific number as I said, but this will give you guys a rough idea on how fast he should be. In Bleach, there are countless light speed feats ranging from the high end to low end scale among the series. You have Lieutenant class Shinigami dodging literal light beams that are used to rescue hollows, which would include the Vasto Lorde tier hollows who have maybe come to Earth, meaning it needs to be that quick to actually rescue and take them back to Wako Mundo, and it's referred to as light even in the data books. The Nagashon, which is used for rescuing hollows and is made of light that we can actually see. How in the do people come to the conclusion, oh no, that's definitely high hypersonic, bro. No, that's how quick it is. It's maybe supersonic at max, you know what I'm saying? You see that light right there? That light is literally hyped up by the head captain, and he states, don't even bother, they're already inside that light, they're gone. It was way too quick, it all happened in the snap of a finger. Nah, it ain't that quick. The data books are just lying to all of us, don't even worry about it, guys. You even have Arden Yeto dodging light at point blank range, which is even a narrative point to do with his weakness to light. And then X-Axis, who is like the embodiment of light. He's essentially Bleach's version of Kizaru from One Piece, right? He's over there performing massively FTL feats. And Nanao, someone who doesn't even have a Zanpakuto and almost her undergarments when merely standing near Yamamoto, is able to perceive and understand that X-Axis's movements are actually light-based attacks. Ichigo in the damn Soul Society arc, while in Shikai, can blitz multiple characters that are clearly light speed, one of which being the right-hand man of Yamamoto, and the other one being Soifon's lieutenant from the Stealth Force, one of the fastest captains in the series and praised by Aizen himself for her speed. That Ichigo not only scales to characters like that, but he also scales to lieutenants who are comparable to the ones that dodge the actual Nagashon point blank And if you want to take it even further, this same fodder tier Ichigo, who later goes Bankai against characters like Byakuya, who scales to 2 other characters who are incredibly well known for their Shunpo ability, and we can say that Ichigo in this sense is faster than they are at that point in the story by far because of how crazy his Bankai is when he first goes into it, right? I don't think anyone would even contest that idea. Well, this same Ichigo later on against Ukiura has a Bankai that is considerably stronger than that Bankai. Then he has a holification on top of that. Then he has his Vasto Lorde form on top of that, which makes him some god tier character, right? This makes him undoubtedly many times faster than Light, let alone just Light speed bare minimum. And if you want to take it further, even one of the weakest versions of Ichigo was performing relativistic feats, as the data books say Seros are light-based attacks. He can react to a point-blank Sero, then slash through that said Sero, injuring the Menos Grande, and Menos Grande are hollows that Rukia believes, quote, the Royal Special Task Force must come and deal with if they ever appear. When she says this, she could be talking about the real Royal Zero Squad, but I think we all know that that's clearly not true, especially given the time frame of when those chapters came out. That was a very long time ago, like that was the Stone Age of Bleach, so I'm not going to take that literally, but I think what was actually being implied at that point in the story was actually just a member of the Gotei 13, and this is just some old term that Tite Kubo used before he actually invented the Gotei 13, so he was just referring to, oh, some big guy from the Soul Society is going to have to come down here and deal with them, you know, even as a squad, so it's obvious what was being implied. But anyway, regardless of that statement, she is referring to a class of Soul Reaper that is at least lieutenant to captain level, so this feat is unironically light speed, even all the way back in chapter 49, and as I said once more, when she's talking about a certain squad coming down, she's obviously referring to characters like Renji or Byakuya, which appear only just a little bit later in the story, so. But I mean, I guess when you take all of that into consideration and many of the other light speed scans that I haven't mentioned in this video, and I'm gonna actually save for an individual video in the future, right? I guess the Vasto Lorde is only the speed of sound because sonido translates to sound in Spanish, and the data book says that Ichigo has godlike lightning type speed, which is meant to be impressive, yet in that same fight, Byakuya is whipping out lightning based Kido in their battle. It's clearly like some Bible tier wording to hype up Ichigo's transformation. You know how they like to use the words godlike or holy or unlimited, heavenly, words like that, right? They use a lot of those words in old books and old mythology or even books about religion and things like that. It's not meant to be taken literally, but people still whip out that dusty ass databook scan and try to say, well, the databooks say here that, let me just scroll over to the page. Like lightning, Ichigo presses Byakuya with godlike speed and attacks him at close range. Therefore, well, we can assume and substantiate from that statement that Ichigo is only the speed of a lightning bolt. Like, do you guys understand how silly that is? Not gonna get into that crap, and then, then we have the Gin stuff. I'm gonna have to talk about that in my light speed video. Be on the lookout for that, please, guys. Holy f***, some people are... As for defense and regeneration, the Vasto Lorde also has incredible regenerative ability, being able to heal a removed arm almost instantly while he was in a much weaker version of his full hollow form, and did this while fighting multiple Vizards who would later go on to be relative to higher tiers in the Aizen War in Karakura Town. This is great because the version that fought Ukiura is much stronger, and these Vizards panicked about the idea of having to fight it for over an hour, and when it whipped out a Sero. White also not only brought Ichigo back from the dead, but he used instant regeneration to restore the organs blown out of his chest by Ukiura, meaning he has better regenerative ability and more firepower than Ukiura does. Ichigo's hollow actually healed his organs, and that's something which Ukiura couldn't even do, and his speciality was actually the ability to regenerate limbs and body parts. And plus, it's still cool to keep it in mind because he did all of this while he was in a weakened state. Alongside this, the Vasto Lorde was able to crush Ukiura's Lanzador Relampago with his bare hand and cancel the explosion, which is a wild feat because it shows his Hiedo is insanely strong, and this attack is stronger than both of their original fired Seros. It also shows off a cool little detail in the manga about the Vasto Lorde, which even I myself missed until I reread it recently, and that's that the Vasto Lorde appears to have a Hiedo technique that is very similar to what Grimmjow does against Asuka Naklevar in the War Arc, where they can strengthen one part of their body, making it black. Originally, when I read these chapters as they released, I assumed that this was just Grimmjow showing off a technique where he can tap into his resurrection abilities while he's in base form, especially because the time skip had just happened. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Grimmjow's learned how to fight better in his release form. But as you can see in both panels, it's spreading across their fingers, and in Grimmjow's case, spreading up his forearm in the exact same way, meaning the Vasto Lorde used this cool hollow technique to strengthen his fingers into these crazy looking claws and pierce the lance, making it implode. So once again, the actual defense and regenerative ability of the Vasto Lorde is pretty damn impressive, as we know that spiritual pressure is relative to your offense and defense, which is confirmed in the Kenpachi versus Ichigo battle, meaning he without a doubt has the strongest hero we've seen at that point in the story. The Vasto Lorde can also use a technique later on in the series which wasn't actually used against Ukiura, and that is a Seto, which is mixed with a Getsuga Tensho. Originally, a lot of people believe that this was called King's Gronrei Sero, as a lot of the older translations referred to it as that, but it appears it's just a translation error, as in the official translations it's never called that whatsoever. But anyway, it's still a really cool technique. I'm not going to go too much into it, that's for future videos, but as shown by how crazy a Gronrei Sero is stated to be, because Espada rank 4 and higher are told not to release below the canopy of Los Noches, as it may destroy Los Noches. Any Espada, even if they're the rank of Aranyedo or Zomari, if they use a Gronrei Sero, it makes them as lethal to Los Noches as Espada rank 4 and higher releasing. Now, I'm not trying to scale those Espada to the high tiers who are 4 and higher, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that it's insane what a Gronrei Sero can actually improve their ability to be. It shows us that the Gronrei Sero can actually multiply your power by at least 10 plus times in attack potency, meaning the Vasto Lorde with its full Shihakusho could be 250 times stronger than Ukiura at his most lethal attack potency. If the Vasto Lorde with a full Shihakusho is around 20 to 25 times stronger than Ukiura, right, in his second release at max potential, because he can actually block the Lanzador Lampago in the Hellverse movie, and so on. Now, if this Vasto Lorde once more was wearing a full Shihakusho, as shown when he appears in Ichigo's inner world when he's at full power, and he uses a Gronrei Sero mixed with a Getsuga Tensho, he would multiply his power by 10, making him 250 times stronger than Ukiura. Now, a lot of you might have major issues with me making that statement, but please listen to what I have to say, because it's not actually as crazy as it sounds. I want to put the nail in the coffin for two more points that are ridiculously idiotic, and they're always brought up when it comes to downplaying Ichigo and the Vasto Lorde. Those two things being, Yami doesn't react to the Vasto Lorde, therefore it's weaker than him, and the Vasto Lorde is only as strong as it is because it gets buffs in Hell and Wako Mundo. Well, as I explained in my Ukiura video, Yami is horrendous at using Pesquisa and can't tell how strong any of his opponents are in battle. He couldn't even gauge Ichigo's spiritual pressure at the start of the Espada arc, and this resulted in his arm getting cut off by an Ichigo who should have had no chance against him whatsoever. The databooks even back this up and say that they weren't in any position to be worried whatsoever. He couldn't sense Yoruichi or Urahara's spiritual pressure, and he thought that Kenpachi was weak. You can actually see him when they first arrive in Karakura Town and he's facing off against Ichigo. He's asking Ukiura how strong everybody is there. Like, what more do I need to say? He did make those cocky ass statements to Ichigo later, but just remember, he was fighting a less than half powered holified Ichigo who was considerably weaker than his Vasto Lorde form, and he still had trouble with this Ichigo, and only started talking this way once he realized that Ukiura was dead. The same Ichigo who says multiple times, I can't even use my holification correctly in this fight because the mask feels heavy and weird. At the end of the day, Aizen was expecting this holo to eventually be a threat to himself, as he says Ichigo should be stronger than he currently is, and for the Vasto Lorde to be weaker than Yami of all characters, when the Vasto Lorde wasn't even at full power, and we see that when Ichigo can use the full extent of its abilities without any restrictions, and it works alongside all of his other abilities, it's even a threat to Yuha Bark. Or even just take Dongai Ichigo as an example. His power, when the Vasto Lorde, the Quincy powers, and the Shinigami powers are all mixed in together and working at once with no restrictions, his power is crazy. For Aizen to have the expectation that Ichigo and his holo could eventually become a worthy fight for him, and yet it's weaker than the Espada that Gin confirms Aizen is stronger than in base form, without even using Kyoku Soigetsu. Gin specifically says the reason they follow Aizen is because they're scared of his power, not his hypnosis. That makes absolutely no narrative sense, nor sense in general. Aizen himself says that he set out particular battles to take place so that Ichigo would master his holo abilities. If you want more information on this, I highly suggest watching my Ukiura video which is linked in the description below after you finish this video, because I go much more in depth with this information, and a lot of it is things that I shouldn't even need to explain, but so many fans of this series and people who just don't understand the series continue to parrot such crap when it comes to these narrative points. The other point that I'd like to talk about very quick is actually an issue I see a lot of people bring up, and that's that he gets a buff in Hell and Wako Mundo, therefore if he was in Karakura Town, he wouldn't be as strong as the top 3 Espada that fight there. Uryu makes a statement that says, I don't know how close Aizen is to turning hollows into Oronkars or how organized they are, but in any case, the Oronkars are sure to see us as both enemies and food. And we should assume that the hollows we meet here are several times stronger than they appear to be. But one thing that he also states is that small hollows can sustain themselves just by breathing. Now, this is actually something that Yami says when he enters the world of the living. He specifically says that the only difference between Wako Mundo and the real world is that it's actually harder to breathe, that being the difference, right? Now, what we can interpret from this statement is that Uryu is saying that the most casual of hollows might be much stronger than they actually are when they appear. It's never once said by Uryu, Ichigo, or even Chad that, oh, this Espada is way stronger than he was in Karakura Town. Like, if you just take Ichigo, for example, when he fights against Grimmjow, he never makes any comment about Grimmjow being stronger than he was in the real world. Once again, the statement that's being made here is, oh, that makes sense why these little small hollows that are like the size of a dog can survive, because the reishi in the atmosphere is much more common, and those hollows that you might run into that are the same as the ones in the real world, right? The ones that appeared in the first few episodes of Bleach, those guys, instead of being complete fodder that you can just fart on, they might actually take more than one blow to slash open and kill. Literally, this statement, which is so damn dumb, and people try to use it to twist and change and downplay how strong the top Espada are that are in Wako Mundo, it's literally the equivalent of a small hollow being able to eat and survive and not just die, and Yami finding it harder to breathe in the real world. And then you have Chad, who makes a comment about his powers, but we barely ever see him get any sort of improvement in strength, and even if he did, he's a fodder character, so it's like you can't even quantify him compared to the others later on anyway. But once again, Yami says the actual difference is, oh, it's harder to breathe in the real world. Like, whoop-de-doo, not a big deal. I mean, even when they face off against Urahara and Yoruichi and all of those guys, Ukiura is still able to do really well against Urahara. I mean, what's interesting with their encounter with Yoruichi and Urahara is that Yami fires a Sero at Yoruichi, which even the data books say is going to kill her. Urahara stuffs the attack with his Benahime, and then he fires a second one with the intent to kill Yami. Ukiura in base form Sonido's over, slaps the attack with one hand while the other's in his pocket away with absolute ease. Now, if you were to say Ukiura goes second release in the real world and gets an increase of 100 times, what do you think's gonna happen to Mr. Kisuke Hattenclogs Urahara? Just think about that for a second, guys, because even Ukiura says when he's about to leave, he's like, yeah, Yoruichi, you should probably stop talking shit, like you know what's gonna happen if we actually fight you properly. And the data books do specifically say that they were not in danger even after they appeared to help Ichigo. I just really wanted to shut that down because I have seen a few people who like to debate Bleach bring up the idea of, oh, well, the hollows are much stronger in Wako Mundo when it's such a small amount of an increase. Like, sure, it buffs the fodder hollows, but it doesn't do anything to the Espada to a point where it's even noticeable. Oh, they can take an extra breath. It's like having an inhaler for them. Like, come on, guys, let's be honest. And then also there's the Hellverse statement where, you know, Ichigo's hollow goes more berserk and the powers can come out easier in Hell. Even if that was true and you were to say that Hell amps the hollow, Ichigo makes the statement about the Vasto Lorde while he's on Earth and says that if it was to come out again, it would destroy the world. So once again, another statement that's being twisted to suit people downplaying Bleach. Very silly. But anyway, guys, I just want to thank you all for watching this far into the video. I hope that this was enjoyable as the Ukiura video. I'm going to be doing videos on Stark and Grimmjow and Yamamoto and lots of war stuff very soon, so please subscribe to me if you're new. I do apologize if this video was rambly at all whatsoever. I actually did some of this off the cuff, but I feel like I did a pretty good job because people really do downplay the Vasto Lorde. This guy has, you know, planetary plus feats while he's at half power, and then he has his Grand Rei Zero mixed with the Getsuga Tensho, which can amp that by many times over, so he is pretty damn strong. I mean, not only is he, once again, undoubtedly multi-planetary with ease, but he also has insanely fast regenerative ability and defense that far surpass someone like Ukiura. He is also massively faster than light with ease. Like, it's, you can't even argue against it. It's that consistent among the story. But I guess if you want to be a smooth brain, you can just say that he's only supersonic because of the Sonido translation to sound. So I guess he's a speed of sound multi-planetary hollow, if you want to put it that way. Like, that just sounds fucking retarded. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the video. I'm going to go more into this sort of stuff in the future when I talk about war-related stuff and many of the other characters that I mentioned just before. But once again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do me a big favor and go check out my Ukiyo-e video, which is linked in the description below. Go give that video a like, go give it a comment, go, I don't know, watch it. I hope you will enjoy that video. There'll be much more Bleach content in the future, but please, if you want more Bleach content, hit that subscribe button. Let me know. If you support me, I'll support Bleach. So thank you all for watching.